Now, the killings by herdsmen is still on the front burner. Same with the proposed establishment of cattle colonies to stem the attacks, which have been met with stiff resistance by many states.
Absolutely. Now, but what exactly is the solution to this problem? We have still have Biodun Shomi in the studio with us to talk about this. Yes, mostly northern states have indicated that they would give land for the colonies, but then southern states are not buying it. Do you think it's the way to go, first off?
No, it's quite very clear that we need to embrace modern cattle farming method. Otherwise, we will end up in big problem. When you create a colony for cattle, are you going to create the same colony for pigs? What about the poultry? Are you going to create a colony for them? Or do we need, poultry farmers, to start fighting over land before we begin to think of what to do? The reality of the matter is cattle farming is a private business, just like poultry farming, just like pig farming. So therefore, government needs to create the enabling environment, for cattle farmers, just like other sectors, but not necessarily to acquire land for them, police it with rangers, on their behalf. Government cannot do that. Government needs to focus on the major business of managing the whole country rather than focusing on herdsmen alone. And in any case, it's like shooting ourselves in the foot. The government has a food strategy, on food sufficiency. So if we allow the cattle to eat the crops on the farm, already we are shooting ourselves in the foot. The cost of living will go up, the cost of food will go up. We'll end up having to spend huge amount of foreign exchange, on importing food, to prevent starvation. So why do we need to do that?
The problem. But then again, some would argue that, drastic situations do call for drastic measures. Like, this is a really serious problem that Nigeria is facing now. If not the cattle colonies, maybe the mistake on the part of government was to name, whatever parcel of land that they're going to set aside for the herdsmen colonies. And that is what is not sitting well with Nigerians. After all, we used to have Obudu Cattle Ranch and all manner of ranches, all across the country in the 50s and 60s. So why can't we go back to that template that worked before and stop this argument about colonies or not?
Absolutely. The only country, to my knowledge, that has a cattle colony today is Pakistan. And we cannot go and do that. It has not necessarily led to Pakistan being a major exporter of beef. But when you look at the 10 leading countries in the world, all of them are doing, in terms of beef exports and beef production, milk production, all of them are doing cattle ranching. That's what they're doing. We should be embracing the best practice. We are not getting the best from the animal anyway. By the time animals are made to trek, over 1,000 kilometers down to the south, already, you don't get the meat that you need to get, and we don't get the milk. We have a very low yield, one of the lowest in the world, from cattle, and that is not what we should be doing. We should be, encouraging, those who own the cattle, to have ranches.
Are even malnourished, really, from what we heard.
They are. When you look at some of those cattle on the road, you barely can see the bones. You can see some of them with their ribs coming out because they've been walking so many distance. The argument that, well, they need special grass, to feed on because they are very selective.
Don't forget,
does not hold.
The agriculture minister, Adwogbe, did talk about importing grass from Brazil to enhance the milk production of these cows, and that in itself, caused another, level of debate.
After saying that the cattle are malnourished.
Yeah, because when you actually look at it, what the grass the cattle are eating currently, did we import them? They are the same grass on the road. So in any case, if the grass we have in the country is not suitable, that is the reason why they should have ranches so that they can provide the necessary grass for them to eat.
You wonder really, because if you ask a typical Fulani man if he's ready to put his cattle in a ranch, most usually he will say no. Because they are used to this nomadic way of rearing their cattle. But then, so what should the government be doing? Yes, many have said that, putting colonies for these people is not the way to go. It is a private business. So what should be the way forward, really? Because some states are already putting anti-grazing laws in place, which is causing these killings.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is one has to recognize that the Fulani herdsmen have a nomadic lifestyle, and they move from one place to the other. We used to have the West Africa grazing reserves, you know, and they move along that belt. But things have changed. We have more population now. There's more demand for land. We need to feed the population. Change. There's also climate change. So, in essence, the herdsmen can be helped by creating ranches. They just have to agree to live within that, to allow the animals to be in those ranches.
The Tiala Cattle Breeders Association, they're already saying, look, we don't even want the colonies. So, if they don't want the colonies, and most of the southern, you know, southeast, southwest states don't want the colonies, except, of course, for the northern
16 northern states.
16 northern states who have accepted. What then?
What the government needs to do is to enforce the law. Look, no matter what anyone thinks, laws, the way our laws are enacted currently is that, you know, it's subjected to public hearing. Everybody would have their say on it, and at the end of the day, once it's voted and signed into law, the law becomes the law.
What we need to do is... What would this law be? To what extent can you enforce this law? In Ekiti, for example, Fayoshe is saying for every cattle breeder or herder or herdsman, you pay 5,000 registration. Yeah, 5,000 naira registration, which means fundamentally you should have some kind of data of how many cattle rearers or breeders or herders that you have in your domain, whether it's in the state or since it's the federal government that's coming up with the colonies. It means you should have accurate data or near accurate data of the herdsmen that you have in Nigeria. Isn't that where government should even start from? Yeah,
we don't have that. We don't have the data because of the migratory nature of the cattle. What Fayoshe is doing, on one part, is good, is trying to enforce the law in the state, but on the other part, there's no need to extort the cattle farmers. Asking them to pay 5,000 naira for permit, knowing that those cattle, when cows are taken to the abattoir, you also pay, you know, tax there when they are to be slaughtered. So it will amount to double taxation. That is not the way to go. We should not be seen to be punishing the cattle farmers. What we need to do is to allow or encourage people to create ranches, even if it means government, you know, having an intervention fund, you know, to support them with only infrastructure like water in those ranches. That is the way to go. We should not even be seen to be punishing the Fulani.
Yeah, but don't you think the Ekiti government is trying to maybe use this to make the
to generate revenue? Yes, that's exactly what they're trying to do.
Toe the line. Recall that a Tiv woman was allegedly killed by a man suspected to be a Fulani herdsman. So maybe, because he had to have a meeting with the leadership of the Fulani people in the state and told all of them that that would not be condoned anymore. Of course, we know that he already spoke with hunters there to protect Ekiti people.
Yeah, the truth of the matter is it was not a cow that killed the Tifi woman. It was just a pure act of criminality, you know, by a suspected herdsman. What we need to do is deal with the crime. At the same time, we need to discourage the issue of double taxation. If you're going to have to tax the cattle at the point of being slaughtered, why then do you need to get them registered with 5,000?
So you don't go, you know, solve a problem by creating another
one, you know,
so
giving room for...
the herdsmen, assuming that really indeed they are herdsmen who have been armed and, you know, causing mayhem across the country, how do you begin to disarm them? I mean, one of the papers this morning already reports 350 million arms in the system. Only last week there was this report about a helicopter that dropped in Taraba,
weapons.
Yes. Though that has been more or less denied, government officials are saying no such thing happened.
But the Nigerian Air Force spokesperson said they are investigating it.
They're investigating.
You know, so there is a reason to be concerned.
So should we begin to think about how to disarm these herdsmen, which would mean maybe some kind of amnesty or something, so that we can actually move forward? Otherwise, we'll be stuck.
But then there's the challenge of even identifying them, because that's the problem. We hear every time that they are foreigners.
Yeah, that is the worrying part in all this. Why would any country allow alleged foreigners to be carrying arms within their country and roaming the whole place, you know, creating mayhem. The truth of the matter is many Nigerians don't think they're foreigners. They think they are local Fulani herdsmen,
Indeed.
you know, who may genuinely be protecting their cows from cattle rustlers. But the fact of the matter is, it underlines the failure of policing in the country. When individuals choose, you know, to resort to self-help, this is what we're beginning to see.
And it brings to mind what former chairman of Northern Elders Forum, Paul Nunongo, said, that they would or could be moved to take up arms if the federal government fails to protect the people. Absolutely.
We're already getting there, and it's really very worrying for many people, because when the police fail to do their job properly, or the security agencies, you know, fail to do their job properly, you have people wanting to defend themselves, and is allowed under the Nigerian law the right to self-defense. You know, you don't have to wait in your farm and wait for someone to take you out. The fact of the matter is, government needs to encourage the security services to crack down, because in Nigeria we don't have strong institutions. What we have is strong individuals. And then you see the security services, you know, looking at the president, you know, looking at the body language, and they are not too sure of what to do. So we really need to go back and build strong institutions. Encourage the security services to crack down. They can look, the cattle farmers, the herdsmen carrying guns are always with the cattle. So where you find cattle, they can easily, you know, disarm those herdsmen, and if need be, charge them, you know, for being in possession of unlawful weapons.
And then, of course, there's the problem of climate change, which President Buhari has said is a major factor in this herdsmen farmers killings. But you don't even see government, you know, taking any proactive measures to tackle the climate change issue. But we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming on the show this morning.